Hello and welcome to ConTinual. My name is Jean Marie Ward, and tonight we're going to talk about A Christmas Carol. Specifically, we are going to talk about the best Christmas Carol in media other than print, which, of course, in the medium of print, it had better be Dickens or we've got a problem. So with me tonight are 6 wonderful panelists, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves before we get started with the questions when we find out what the real best Christmas Carol is. So I'm going to start with Piper.
Oh, hi, I'm Piper Huguley. I write historical fiction and contemporary romance and historical romance.
Okay, great. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Macklem. I'm a legal scholar by day and a fan most of the rest of the time. Supernatural, The Boys, graphic novels, you name it, I love it. I've been involved with a couple of World Cons, a couple of Eurocons, and TitanCon,
Cool.
which is a Game of Thrones convention in Belfast.
Game of Thrones has the same vibe as A Christmas Carol when you come right down to it.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
yeah. It's dark. Anyway, Fraser.
Hi, I'm Fraser Sherman. I write historical fantasy fiction. Well, that's most of my fantasy. And I also write film reference books. I've had one of both published recently.
Oh, congratulations. You'll have to tell us the title at the end when we all get to promote ourselves. Okay, Barbara.
Hey, I am Barbara Evers, and I am a fantasy author, and I basically write epic fantasy and urban fantasy, and also do write some contemporary fiction when it's short fiction.
Okay, great. John?
Hey, I'm John L. French, retired CSI from Baltimore City Police Department. Right now, I write a variety of genres: crime, pulp, fantasy, cryptid, and I once essayed a sequel to A Christmas Carol, which I'll mention at the end.
Okay, great. Carole.
Hi, I'm Carole Stokes. I am a frequent panelist on ConTinual, especially on the Supernatural. And I write a Supernatural fanfic, and am looking in 2023 to publish my first book.
Original book, in other words.
Original book, yes, thank you.
Okay, that's very, very cool. So what was your first introduction to A Christmas Carol? Was it in the words of Dickens or in some of the abridged versions that you sometimes see in the middle grade and younger bookshelves? Or was it through a different medium, a cartoon, a movie, a TV series?
For me, it was A Christmas Carol. I got a paperback copy as a kid and I liked it.
Mm-hmm. Carole?
We had, when I was growing up, we had some form of encyclopedia, which I can't even remember what it was called, but it was several volumes. And I used to just pick it up and read different volumes. And there was a large Christmas section, and it included A Christmas Carol. So my first introduction was actually reading the Dickens version of A Christmas Carol.
Okay, great. John?
My first introduction to A Christmas Carol was Mr. Magoo's A Christmas. And I actually rewatched it last year, and it was exactly as I remember, even put introducing the ghost out of order. And it was a musical, and I was very disappointed when other categories did not mention raspberry.
Raspberry dressing. You have to have the raspberry dressing.
Barbara.
So you stole my answer. Mr. Magoo, I think, was my first. If it wasn't Mr. Magoo, then it would have been a stage play. So we had a children's little theater when I was growing up, and I even remember who played Ebenezer Scrooge. Not that that would mean anything to you guys, but it was one or the other. I don't know which one came first.
Okay, great. Piper?
It was some television version, probably the 1951 Alistair Sims version that would come on. But one of the things that whenever my grandmother would come over during the holidays, we would like to have Christmas Carol marathons and look at different versions together. And then I went and read it myself.
I would think that the Alistair Sim version with, spoiler alert, that's the best Christmas Carol ever, but we will get back to that. I would think that would be a really rough way to be introduced to a Christmas Carol. That is one scary movie. Getting back to the Game of Thrones.
That way to me, I was cool with it. So I don't know. My grandmother was always so amused by Ebenezer Scrooge. She was always laughing at him, so maybe that was why I was not afraid.
Well, yeah, Alistair Sim was a comic actor and a great comedian, and yeah, I've heard it said that you have to be a comedian to play Scrooge or it doesn't work. Lisa.
Alistair Sim version. It was de rigueur in our house on Christmas Eve, and right from the time I was a little kid, that was what my dad and I did on Christmas Eve, was watch the Alistair Sim version every year. And my dad was a huge Dickens fan. Like, I mean, he loved Charles Dickens. He read everything. And I didn't actually, I think I read the Pickwick Papers when I was like a teenager. But didn't get around to reading all the rest of the books, which I have now done. Until later. But I like to listen to books on tape when I run, so I'm going to talk about those versions too.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, have you all listened to The Christmas Carol on tape?
No, I'll be interested in
No.
Yeah, okay, so let's do a little digression here, and do you know how many versions there are, and who do you think captures it best in the books on tape?
The
Lisa.
only one I've listened to, I don't usually listen to audiobooks, but the only one I've listened to is Patrick Stewart's A Christmas Carol, which is a straight reading rather than a audio drama, and he does an excellent job. And I was less impressed with the movie starring Patrick Stewart as Ebenezer, and slightly disappointed because that it wasn't up to the quality of the audiobook. But I think I've listened to that at least 3 times.
Lisa, you said you've listened to it a lot on different audiobooks, or?
Yeah. There's at least 5 versions on LibriVox. I think 4 of them are are straight readings, and there's one that's a dramatic reading. And I've listened to the Patrick Stewart version, I've listened to Hugh Grant, and I've listened to Tim Curry. And I love it.
I gotta get that.
And I listen to books on tape when I run, and I run every day. So I've run across Rowan with Legolas and company. But yeah, of those, the Hugh Grant I think is actually my favorite. The Tim Curry was actually a little disappointing. I hate to say it, but it was. Hugh Grant is he's excellent. You don't even realize you're listening to him, and he changes his voice depending on who he's doing, and it's really good. It's a great version.
Okay, great. I'm leaving the audio versions sort of on the side so they get their own category as opposed to visual media. Have John and Lisa have mentioned their experiences. Have any of the other of you listened to A Christmas Carol as an audiobook? Okay. Well, those are important, good recommendations for people who do use a lot of audiobooks. And Hugh Grant is an underappreciated comic talent. I mean, we had him so much in the 80s and the 90s as the bumbling romantic lead. Then he transitioned into a character actor. But I was just watching Glass Onion this week, and he plays Benoit Blanc's husband. and he comes to the door sort of covered in flour in an apron. And it's one of the funniest shots in the movie. It really is. So
I
yeah,
saw Knives Out for the very first time this weekend.
Oh.
So I can't wait to see Glass Onion now.
yeah, it'll be on Netflix in a few days
Yeah.
from the filming of this.
December 23rd.
Oh,
December 23rd? Okay, great.
wait.
Yeah. Because it's only in the theaters for a week starting before Thanksgiving. So, okay, we will now put that aside and do not think about Daniel Craig playing Scrooge. And then I put it into your head.
that would be delicious.
My name is Scrooge. Ebenezer Scrooge.
My name is Scrooge.
Ebenezer Scrooge.
Ebenezer Scrooge.
My name's Ebenezer Scrooge, if you're nasty.
Anyway, what other versions have you either been forced to watch or, other than your first exposures, what other versions have you either been forced to watch or sought out because people were telling you must see this? Fraser?
I think the first version that I saw, as opposed to reading, WKRP in Cincinnati did a Christmas Carol version where Mr. Carlson, the head of the station, discovers he's trapped in one of those Christmas Carol things, and it is absolute. Well, I mean, it was a wonderful series anyway, and it was an absolutely hysterical show, and I find it and watch it every year.
Oh, great. Sort of right up there with the I swear to God, I thought turkeys could fly.
Yes, another great holiday episode.
Piper, yeah, you had these marathons, with
Well, one of the ones that was made about 20 years ago or something like that I've seen before and watched occasionally is Diva's Christmas Carol with Vanessa Williams playing a Scrooge role, where she was a diva in a group. She was the lead singer, and of course, one of the other singers died, who was Marley, and that was actually her name. And then the other ghosts come in the form of people whom she stepped over during her career to get to the top. So, it's interesting the way they put one of the ghosts in there was actually like a behind the music, if you remember that show, retrospective of her life on the television, and that's how these certain things were revealed. So it's an interesting version, but a little different. But yes, very interesting.
Yeah, okay, cool. Barbara?
So I was racking my brain on this one because when you think pure Christmas Carol, so I'm glad that you brought up the Vanessa Williams one, because there were several years ago where I was sick a lot in December, and I sat there, this was before streaming, and watched Christmas movie after Christmas movie after Christmas movie on Hallmark and Lifetime. And what I discovered was there were basically two storylines. Some version of A Christmas Carol or some version of My Dad is Santa Claus. And that was basically all of them. FYI, I know we're not talking about that this year. It seems to be all the new ones are about songs. But I saw, I don't know how many of them. Tori Spelling did one. She was Christmas Carol. They were horrible. Oh, they're also horrible. And I ran across one that just came out this year. I want to say Lifetime did it, and it's got Kelsey Grammer. It's not really a Christmas Carol. It's called The 12 Nights of Christmas Eve, but it's kind of a Christmas Carol. There's no ghost, but he keeps getting a chance to, it's kind of a Groundhog Day, Christmas Carol merger, Grump gets awakened to the Christmas spirit sort of thing. It actually wasn't too bad considering it was Lifetime. But just about anything you find on the Hallmark typical run-of-the-mill movie, there's quite a few of them, and most of them not very good.
There's actually 8 Christmas time loop movies that I can think of, so that's one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, John.
Okay, I'm going to get an argument on this, but my favorite Christmas Carol is the George C. Scott version. No, I would actually watch that over Alistair Sims. Another one I really enjoyed was an American Christmas Carol with Henry Winkler playing a Scrooge-like character who sells things on credit. And when people can't pay, he ruthlessly repossesses whatever he sold them. And in an opening scene, he basically hits a bookstore. And one of the things he does is he rips the leather binding off a copy of A Christmas Carol because he can sell the leather. I've also really enjoyed Bill Murray's Scrooged, which is a modern take. I really want to see Christmas Carol that they talk about Scrooge, which was Mary Lou Retton as Tiny Tim and starring Buddy Hack.
Remember that.
Whoa. Yeah, they have made Christmas Carol every which way from Sunday. Lisa, okay, casting aside the audios, casting aside the Alistair Sim version, what other versions have you seen that you either enjoyed or you want to warn people away from?
The colorized Alistair Sim. Not allowed. No. Purist, absolute purist. Actually, I had completely forgotten a lot of these other versions, and I did see them. So, I think one of the other ones that hasn't been brought up yet is the Muppet Christmas Carol. I mean, how can you say no to the Muppets, right?
Right.
And I really like the Henry Winkler one too. So that's another really good one.
Carol.
Well, so do I just pick one of my favorites? Or
Well, no, you can talk about, the ones you've seen, whether you want, you really like it or you really hate it. We're good.
Okay, so let's go with one of the integral ones that I grew up with, and that would be the Magoo. I mean, I watched that from a small tot to present day. And my daughter's like, how can you like him? He can't see anything. And I'm like, I don't know, but he's so cute. And we have the raspberry dressing, and we have the ghosts, and the jingly gold song, and that was just always something we did. It was right up there with watching Rudolph, and a couple of those where you saw those every year. And for me, it was Magoo. I always had to see Magoo. And then it's still in there in my tribe hive brain. So somebody will call it out and I'll be like, that's it, that's Magoo.
Okay.
So that's essential to me.
Okay, so it sounds like to you, music, and to a lesser extent, because I believe the Mr. Magoo cartoon was in color, even though the first time I watched it, it was black and white, because I
just remember it really in black and white at first, because that's all I had. And then I think at some point I watched it and I was like, oh, the raspberry dressing is red.
Probably like raspberry bright red. Yes. So do you think that the music enhances the experience?
I loved the music. I mean, that the money song is so cute. And, I think the music is really a great sideline to the storyline if it's done properly.
And okay, what about you, Fraser? Do you like the music or not?
Let's see. Yes, I like Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol a lot. I think the music is great. I also like Albert Finney in Scrooge, and that has some great songs. And probably my favorite Christmas future moment, when he discovers all the people who owe him money are celebrating the wonderful thing he's done, and he doesn't realize it's because he's dead and all his debts are not void.
Yeah. Barbara, what about you? Do you like music in your Christmas Carol, or do you say no, not grim enough?
It's okay. It's okay. In preparing for this, because I've had my regular standbys that I watch every single year, and that's the Patrick Stewart and the George C. Scott. But I tried to pick up a few others that I hadn't watched in a while. Like I watched Muppet Christmas Carol the other day, and I'd forgotten that it was a musical too. I was like, oh yeah, okay. I'm okay with it, especially, I mean, the Muppet one is humorous anyway. Mm-hmm. So to have the musical in there works for me. But I like musicals anyway, so I'm okay either way with it. And it's not really a musical, but in the Patrick Stewart version, we do get him singing, and we, you know, at one point, which is kind of nice too, because he has this wonderful, wonderful voice. Mm-hmm. But it's okay either way for me.
Piper, music, no music.
Yeah, the music, I'm fine with that. The part in Scrooge with Albert Finney for the thank you very much. The number when they're all dancing in the streets, and it was like it's just really a great musical. And of course, yeah, Mr. Magoo's the Ringle Ringle.
Yes.
And yeah. And the one I like whenever he's in Christmas Future, and the poor people sing and their mouths are all open with their missing teeth and all of that kind of thing was so hilarious.
And they're taking down all his bed curtains and things.
Yes. It was like, oh my gosh, he must have been really bad in life. So yes, I don't mind the music at all.
Okay, Lisa?
Well, I mean, actually, I think the music is really integral to the story, because, I mean, if we go right back to sort of the actual story, you know, every time there's music, it's a happy memory for him. And it's something that, you know, it really shows his evolution back into being, you know, a good guy, right? Mm-hmm. So like when he's at school and he hears the caroling outside, and then when he's at Fezziwig's and they have the dance, and then, you know, at the very end, and I mean, there's, you know, the kids singing Christmas carols, and he chases them away at the beginning, and then he, you know, pats him on the head at the end, and when he goes to his nephews, and there's the big party there and the dancing and stuff like that. So, I mean, to me, it's just, it really is an integral part of the story. So it really seemed like a natural offshoot to have a musical of it, really.
Mm-hmm. John, music, no music.
I'm not so much for, well, Magoo, Mr. Magoo, as an exception. I'm not so much for the musical versions, but I do like the incorporation of the background music and, you know, incidental music. You know, like for instance, Scrooge is walking down the street and there are people singing Christmas carols. When he views the party at his nephew's house, you know, they're singing. One of my favorite parts, and I think this is I've only heard it in the audio version with Patrick Stewart, is when you have the men at sea singing Christmas carols in order to celebrate the season, even though that's as much as they do. You know, when it's naturally incorporated into the story, it adds to the story rather than just, without it, you're missing something. You're missing Christmas. Mm-hmm. One of the things people think about, and no pun intended, are Christmas carols.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So the group seems to be kind of evenly split. Music, taking music as a given of the season, and background music aside, putting that to the one side. But in terms of having a Christmas Carol be a musical with songs and stuff, the group seems to be about evenly split on whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Now, last year when we did this cage match, and we're probably not going to do a cage match this year, the two main contenders were, I think you remember, John, the Muppet Christmas Carol and the Alistair Sim version with the George C. Scott version making very, very strong showing. But we haven't really gotten into the Muppet Christmas Carol at all this year, or the George C. Scott, except with that mention. So has everybody seen both of those versions?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And do your, are the Muppets what you introduce your kids to, or do you go hard line and get into George C. Scott or the Alistair Sim?
Or Mr. Magoo, which was what I introduced my son to, Mr. Magoo.
My daughter went right into either Alistair Sim or George C. Scott. I was more of a when I introduced her to Christmas shows, we went right to the Grinch.
Oh,
The original cartoon. I
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely, like, my kids were definitely all with the Rankin Bass and all of that, and then the Grinch and stuff, but absolutely the Muppets. We all saw it in the theater, and it was just really, it's so delightful. I watched it in the theater and I thought, if after my whole life seeing the Christmas Carol umpteen thousand times, different versions, I didn't even remember TV versions like you were talking about, the TV episode. I didn't even think about that thinking of this panel, but I was like, I've seen so many versions of the Christmas Carol and I'm in the theater, and I'll be darned if somebody didn't freaking make me cry about Tiny Tim. After all this time, you have a winner.
It's a puppet.
And the humor is not to be beat. I mean, you just can't beat the good Muppet humor. Light the lamp, not the rat.
And Michael Caine playing it, absolutely.
Oh, so good. He's
absolutely
so good in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Caine is.
Yeah.
He's one of those actors that whatever he's in, he adds to.
Mhm.
His epitaph should be, his gravestone should be marked. Not much of a plot, but it has Michael Caine.
And his interactions with the Muppets are seamless.
Yeah.
He's one of those ones where you just don't even think about the fact that they're on different planes of reality.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned that you cried at the Muppet Christmas Carol, because I'm sitting there watching it this past week going, oh my gosh, I'm tearing up, and it's the Muppets. So, yeah, it definitely got me right in the heart pretty hard too.
Right.
And it's been a long time since I watched that one. My daughter, it's her favorite. Her absolute favorite is the Muppet Christmas Carol. And I was trying to think, I think she started with George C. Scott because it came out when she was a kid. And we watched it because it was a mini series on TV. But then we saw the Muppet Christmas Carol too. So I think she preferred the lighter side of it. I don't know what my other daughter thought, but I know the oldest one really, really preferred the Muppet Christmas Carol. The George C. Scott one, for a long time, I loved it, but it's almost, actually, it's not my favorite anymore. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, I'm sure. But
yep, Lisa, your experiences with the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Well, I mean, it's fun. I like it. I like the other versions, but I mean, when I really have to watch a Christmas Carol, it's got to be the Alistair Sims.
Yeah, okay, then we'll go with that. One of the things that, there have been a lot of TV versions, and there was not too long ago a rather grim British TV version that was like 6 episodes, and it was Scrooge's backstory, and it was like, this is weird. I don't care why he's a miser. I just want to get into the plot, I may be the only person other than my husband who watched that, and he only watched it because he saw me watching it and swearing. And he said, how bad can it be? And he said, oh my God.
I really don't like, in general, I like my villains fully formed. I could have lived without knowing why Darth Vader is Darth Vader.
Yeah.
I could have lived without reading Hannibal Rising. I want them on the screen, evil, and let's go.
Let's go destroy them or redeem them, one or the other. No, no middle ground.
I did try to watch the one you're talking about, and I just couldn't. It did not grab me. It did not draw me in. All I could think is, where is Christmas Carol? I don't want to watch this. And so I never finished it.
For a good TV version, there is an old, on the Ghostbusters cartoon of the last century, they had an episode where they get drawn back in time, find this helpless old man being threatened by 3 strange-looking ghosts and bust them. And then they get back to the present and find written a manuscript that convinced everyone Christmas was a load of humbug, and now nobody celebrates it, so they have to fix things. It's called Xmas Marks the Spot. You can find it online.
I like that idea. I like that idea.
Good idea. Somebody had really think about
Somebody had a lot of imagination. Okay, let's riff on that a little bit. Okay, you're all creators. Okay, fans are creators, writers are creators, because we're all part of this symbiotic relationship of things. Okay, so you have an unlimited budget, and you have been tasked to film a new version of A Christmas Carol. What would be your ideal Scrooge and or cast, and what element of the story do you think needs to be emphasized but has not? So I'll start with you, Fraser.
Let's see. There have been a couple of female-led Christmas carols. I would love to see what Judi Dench could do as a female Ebenezer Scrooge, because it's just awesome. As to the element that I'm not sure there is anything that is hugely missing. 2 elements that are most important for me, and they are in most versions, are Scrooge's emotional isolation. I mean, he's cut himself off. He has made himself completely miserable. He doesn't even enjoy all his wealth. And the message, which is, God knows, depressingly timely, that the business world works better if the people who run businesses are not ginormous, gaping a-holes. That will never go out of fashion, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'm and I'm good.
Okay, Carol.
Gosh, I do have to say, as far as you mentioned the female-led ones, and somewhere out there, there is a version with Susan Lucci.
Yes, Abby.
Yes, I remember that one. I remember that one. Yes.
Personally, because I'm a big Supernatural fan, I would love to see a Supernatural version. I'd love to see like Sam and Dean having to deal with, the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. We get a glimpse of it when there is an episode where we see Sam and Dean as kids, flashbacking and everything, which is the closest we get. But that would be really interesting because it's a very in the trenches kind of viewpoint. It's not a grand scope of things, for instance, as we get like in things like the Muppet Christmas Carol, but a very personal, intimate, gritty, those kinds of things can really resonate, where you're like, it's not about, this whole big concept. It's about, do I have enough to scrounge up for a cupcake, or something like that. And those kinds of things can be very, very personal. And I think that's a really interesting way to present it, is let's make it not the panoply that we're often used to seeing, but something really scaled down and possibly a little dark, as these, especially in Supernatural, you have these basically neglected boys kind of struggling their way through life. And what could that do? What could that kind of vision do for them in letting them know that there is a future and there's a possibility of a brighter future and that kind of thing? And I think that would be a really interesting angle to come to it at.
And also, considering all of the mayhem they commit as adults, they would have a lot of ghosts of Christmas past. Piper.
It's interesting because this was posted on Facebook as a topic a couple weeks ago, and someone brought up the Christmas Carol animated that was about 35 minutes from the early 70s that was off of the original illustrations that was in the Dickens book.
You can find it on YouTube.
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube, and I went and watched it. Yeah, on YouTube because I don't remember seeing it before. It was really like portrayed some of that, especially when the ghost lifts up his robe and you see want, and it was just so affecting. So yeah, just refer to that. If I had money. And I would go with the decolonized version. I think in terms of my watching of the Christmas Carol, I noticed when Albert Finney played in Scrooge, he purposefully, because he was a hottie then at the time that movie was made, but he purposefully went for like the old decrepit Scrooge. But recent Scrooges have tended to be younger and hotter. So I would go all the way hot and have Idris Elba be Scrooge.
That would be hot, yes. Tight pants, 19th century tight pants.
Give him all the money. No,
I'll watch Idris Elba in anything. Sorry. Sold. Maybe Jeffrey Dean Morgan could take a break from being Negan, and he could be like...
How would you decolonize? I mean, other than the casting, how would you decolonize this?
Well, that's, in terms of thinking about that storyline, and his riches and all of that other kind of stuff. There could be something done with that. Mm-hmm. In terms of that. But yeah, I think it would have to be him to be Ebenezer, and just go full throttle. But I mean, some of these, nobody's talking about like some of these more recent versions, like FX did one a couple of years ago where he was younger. But it just they lack soul or heart or something, these versions in recent years. I don't know why the versions we're talking about tend to have, a certain age to them. Have people lost the sense of being able to do it anymore? I don't know.
Well, there was I read some criticism a couple of years ago to the effect, it was discussing the Alastair Sim version, that it was made during a specific point in British history where there was a lot of want, because it was directly in the aftermath of World War II. There was rationing in certain areas up until the mid-50s. In certain things, the old money that, in theory, and I always doubt that money is ever as generous as portrayed, that created the landscape, the countryside, that preserved village life, etc., had all been destroyed due to the death taxes needed to pay for 2 world wars. And so and there was incredible labor unrest. So when they were making A Christmas Carol, the unspoken background to everything was this tremendous poverty and tremendous unrest. And when you go to things like the George C. Scott version, and to a lesser extent the Albert Finney version, you're going at times where in the George C. Scott version, your Reagan administration, where there is this sudden gap, this tearing of the social fabric, where you've got the beginning of the super rich and everybody else. And with the Albert Finney version, it was in the 70s when we were in the middle of a major recession due to gas prices. So it may be that the more recent versions have not been made during a time of social stress. Therefore, they missed the subtext that infuses the original work, and some of these things that, other than the Muppets, and which talks about the human aspect, and ditto the Mr. Magoo, which is all about the human aspect, but misses this subtext of privilege versus want. that
So-
was so apparent in some of these that we're experiencing.
As we talk about the more recent ones, I mean, I think this is where something like Scrooged, we can see where Scrooged is about people trying to remake that story, but simply as an extravaganza and you know, like how many effects can we have in, and Santa comes in with, you know, automatic weapons and Mary Lou Retton, and let's staple the ears on the mice for the reindeer and stuff. And it's all about the glitz and the surface appeal of the story and not the intrinsic underlying personal aspects of it. And so we see Bill Murray going through all of these shenanigans to create this vast, you know, glitzy thing. And then you've got, you know, Alfred Woodard trying to say, you know, there's more than this. And I think maybe some of the newer versions, that's kind of what happens, because they're all like, well, let's hit those notes. We got this ghost and this ghost and this ghost, but they're just hitting the ghost. They're not getting into what did the ghost mean and what was his real reaction to it. You know, they're not plumbing the depths of it. They're just getting that surface look at it.
Yeah, to get back to the Alistair Sim version, I think the most telling scene in the whole piece is not Tiny Tim. It's not the Fezziwigs. It's the scene where the laundress, the undertaker, and the charwoman are gathered in the rag picker's hut.
Yeah.
And you've got those with the background, talking about background, the soundtrack is those children coughing their lungs out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that. John, unlimited budget.
Listening to all of you, my mind is working, and I came up with two ideas. One, and this has a lot to do with what I write, primarily, would be essentially a gangster version of A Christmas Carol with the aging Don or the aging crime boss. You know, the ghosts are people he has made into ghosts. And at the end, basically the only ending I can really think of is after he celebrates his Christmas, he starts shall we say singing, and winds up celebrating Christmas and his new identity as, in the witness protection program. The other version would be essentially have Neil Gaiman write, with the Scrooge character somewhat akin to Morpheus.
Okay.
But what
a Christmas Carol Sandman crossover.
Yes. In fact, you could probably do, it's now that you mention that, it's basically Morpheus sending him these dreams. So yes, Sandman Christmas Carol with Morpheus or Daniel, the new Sandman, sending the Ebenezer Scrooge character these dreams. My main interest would be one, some questions. What prompted Marley to try to save Scrooge? I mean, misery loves company, and Marley seemed to be kind of like a worse character than Scrooge. Right. So why wouldn't he want Scrooge to suffer along with him? What prompted Marley to do it? And the other one is what happened to Scrooge once the events of A Christmas Carol were over.
Okay, great. Do you have a preferred casting for either of those versions?
Not for the gangster one, but for the Neil Gaiman thing, it would have to be Benedict Cumberbatch. Because when I heard they were going to make a Sandman movie, this was before it came out. It was everybody was saying Benedict Cumberbatch would make the perfect Morpheus. And then when he signed on as Doctor Strange, the comment was, that's all right. There are enough of dark, brooding British actors to be able to find somebody.
Dark, brooding, skinny British actors, it
Yes.
seems to be required.
Does that mean Martin Freeman will be Tiny Tim?
No, Jacob Marley. I'm not Jacob Marley. Bob Cratchit.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
Okay, that works. That works. Lisa.
I've been casting as you've been talking. and Benedict Cumberbatch did come up. But I had him tagged more for Marley than for Scrooge. So I would want to go traditional. I love the story. So I would cast, I have a couple of different versions. So I've got like a younger cast and an older cast. So I would actually cast Charles Dance as Scrooge.
Okay.
And then for the ghosts, I would have Bill Nighy as the ghost of Christmas Past, or possibly Colin Firth. For Christmas Present, I want Ricky Gervais.
Okay, that would be interesting. I'm not sure that wanton and ignorance would dare lurk under his robe. Just let me say that.
And for future, Carol, you'll like this. For the future Ghost of the Christmas Futures, I'd pick Julian Richings.
Oh, perfect.
I knew you'd like that. And for Bob Cratchit, I would cast Simon Pegg.
Now that I could get behind. Totally.
And then also for so for the younger version, I was thinking Tom Hiddleston as Scrooge, Benedict Cumberbatch as Marley, or possibly throw Andrew Scott into the mix in there somewhere.
Cool. Well, I'll watch anything with it. Tom Hiddleston is right up there with Idris Elba in my book, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's a buddy movie waiting to be made. Tom Hiddleston.
Loki and whoever is the guards the Bifrost Bridge. I forget the name of that character.
Heimdall.
Heimdall, yeah. Loki and Heimdall on the road. I'm there.
Oh yeah.
I'm there. Anyway, Barbara. Okay, unlimited budget. Who would you cast, and what would you particularly like to bring out in your version of A Christmas Carol?
The casting's hard for me, trying to think that one through, so I'll come back to that in a moment. I tend to be a purist when it comes to A Christmas Carol because I love it so much. It is by far my favorite Christmas movie, my favorite Christmas story. So if I was to veer from it, I was stumped at first when you said that, but the more I was listening to y'all talk about things, it dawned on me, I've never really liked the portrayal of the ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. And a lot of things, A Prayer for Owen Meany came to mind because he plays a very scary one in the book. But I was like, no, I don't want to go that route. And I'm thinking I might make the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come a plague doctor. And possibly all of the ghosts would be different, like plague doctors in different phases of different plagues or something along those lines, if I was to try to do something with that. But definitely I could see the Christmas Yet to Come, a plague doctor, and that would be kind of where Tiny Tim's in trouble. It would be what would get Ebenezer Scrooge and so forth. And like I said, I'm a purist, so I'm having a hard time trying to come up with something different to do there. I've always felt like we didn't spend enough time in any of them with the Ghost of Christmas Present either. And so I would, and that goes back to you talking about the different times and what was going on. I would love to focus more on the dynamics and the hierarchy of different societies in the Christmas Present situation, and maybe hone in a little bit more on his daughter's son, Frank, and we see a good bit of the Cratchits. We just see a little bit of Frank and his wife. I'd really like to know a little bit more about them. I think I would want to explore that a little bit more too. As far as casting, I didn't think immediately British. My initial thought for Ebenezer was Morgan Freeman.
Oh, okay.
And I think he would do an incredible job. But then I got to think about it, and I actually started looking up other actors, and I was like, you know, someone else who would do a really good job is Dustin Hoffman.
Okay.
He's such a good character actor. I think he could do a really good Scrooge too. So, but I don't think he would fit with this idea of what I have either. So there you go. I'm all over the place, in other words.
Hey, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. You all been this has been a great panel. The comments you've made have taken it in places I didn't know we needed to go, and I'm damn glad we got there. But we are unfortunately coming up against the end of our time together. So I'm going to do a quick lightning round, asking you all to basically talk about your current work and where folks can find you on the web. Barbara?
Okay, so I am listed as Barbara V. That's V as in Victor, Barbara V. Evers, mainly because there is another Barbara Evers that's an academic and publishes. So I use my middle initial V. And I have an epic fantasy trilogy out, The Watchers of Manaya. I am in the process of working on an urban fantasy. It's about to get into the submission process, so I'll be seeking different publishing routes than what I did with The Watchers. I also have a website, amazingly enough, it's called barbaraVevers.com. All social media, you're going to find me as Barbara V. Evers. Sometimes it has author on the end, like it's Facebook. Sometimes it doesn't, but if you look for Barbara V. Evers, you will find me.
Okay, great. Lisa?
You can find me primarily writing reviews for things like Supernatural when it was on, Walking Dead, which just finished, etc. on spoilertv.com. I also have 2 edited collections of essays on Supernatural out with my co-author Dominic Grace, there with McFarland, and various cons and so on. You can see me doing papers on various pop culture projects. I would be remiss, I have to mention my absolute favorite scene from the Sim version, and that's where Scrooge and Marley are in that meeting and they're taking over the other business.
Oh, yes.
And they both lean back and put their hands in their pockets. I can't sit in a meeting without seeing that. I lean back and I stick my hands down and I'm just like right there.
Gammon and spinach, gammon and spinach. Yeah, I know that scene too well. And you got to watch these two. They'd skin Jack Ketch and he'd never know.
Yep.
I've seen that movie too many times.
Okay. No, not possible.
Too many times.
Yeah. Fraser, okay, what's your latest work and where can folks find you on the web?
I have had 2 books come out in the past 2 months. One was The Aliens Are Here, a book about movies dealing with extraterrestrials on Earth. It came out from McFarland. The other, self-published, is Questionable Minds. It's a steampunk novel set in 1888 where psionic powers work and various skullduggery is afoot. They should both be available on most major platforms. You can find me personally at frasersherman.com. That's Fraser. Yes, I spell it strangely, and everyone gets it wrong, so I should probably start spelling it.
But then you'd have to change your websites and stuff, and that wouldn't work. Anyway, John, most recent work, where can folks find you on the web?
You can find me on Facebook. I have a regular page, John French, and an author page, John L. French. My latest book is The Last Monster, the final volume in my Bianca Jones series. But I would like to mention The Santa Heist, which is a collection of Christmas stories written by myself, Patrick Thomas, and one story we wrote together. One of the stories in Santa Heist is a story called Saving Marley, in which Mr. and Mrs. Ebenezer Scrooge decide to find a way to save Jacob Marley. Yeah, I married the old man. I married the man off. And
Well, he was in love.
I won't say I won't say who it was, but when I told my wife who it was, she says, "You cannot do that." So Scrooge is a little younger than portrayed, and somebody else is possibly a little older.
Okay, okay.
And no, Mrs. Cratchit did not divorce Bob and marry.
She knew better than that.
Yeah.
She had him. She had Bob well trained. She
Yes.
wasn't going to mess with that. I know the signs. Okay. Carole, what about you?
I'm on Facebook on a lot of ConTinual panels, and all my supernatural fanfic is on AO3 under Firesign 10. And the rest of my social media links are on Instagram under Firesign 10. And hopefully next year I'll have my first published original male romance, original contemporary fic, and a new phase will start.
Great. And finally, Piper?
I'm on Facebook under Piper G. Huguley, Instagram Piper_Huguley, and I'm still on Twitter at Piper Huguley. That is my best platform. Anyway, my latest work is called By Her Own Design, which is a historical fiction novel about Anne Lowe, who was the Black woman who designed Jacqueline Kennedy's wedding dress. And it is still available at most retailers.
Cool. I'm glad to hear it. Wonderful subject, and I know it's a wonderful book. On my TBR pile, getting higher. Okay, and I'm Jean Marie Ward, and you can find me and all of my works, for whatever reason you might wish, at jeanmarieward.com. Thank you all for a wonderful panel, and thank you for joining us here at ConTinual. Happy holidays.